Hello, everyone, and a very good evening to you all. This is Sharana, your host for this evening. Firstly, I thank you all for joining us today for the Ask Me Anything session on transitioning into product management roles with our eminent speaker, Mr. SaiSatish Vedam. You will be able to interact with Mr. SaiSatish to gain some actionable insights on the subject. I request you all to actively participate and make the best of this 1 hour session. Please feel comfortable to come online and ask your questions directly with our speaker once he has already spoken to you about the subject. Now, before we start today's session, allow me to give you a quick introduction to the Institute. The Institute of Product Leadership is Asia's first business school providing accredited degree programs and certification courses in product management, product leadership, data science, and design. The Institute has partnered with three universities in India and the University of Houston in the United States. Founded in 2012, the Institute has built and developed a community of over 3,000 plus successful alumni, leading the product, data, and design teams across the world. We also have knowledge partners for over 200 plus organizations worldwide. You can find out more about the Institute and programs offered on our webpage. Please check the chat window for the URL. A quick overview for the International Certification Program in Product Management. It is created and curated by industry CXOs, focused on learning and career outcomes for aspiring and current product managers, with many case studies, simulations, real-life projects, and personalized coaching. Go ahead and scan the QR code to know more about this program. I'll give you a couple of seconds here to scan the QR code. We also have some exciting news for all the attendees tonight. Thanks to the University of Houston, you have an opportunity to win the prestigious Graham Scholarship worth $200 for the International Certification in Product Management program offered by the Institute. The best asked question in tonight's session will get this reward. Now, without further ado, I'd like to allow me to welcome our eminent guest of tonight's session, Mr. SaiSatish Vedam. Mr. SaiSatish is a product leader with extensive experience in building and bringing disruptive technology products to the market. He has worn many hats during his career: programmer, designer, architect, analyst, manager, mentor, and a strategist in large corporations. He was most recently the Senior Director of Product Management at Oracle. He is also an executive coach, senior faculty at the Institute of Product Leadership. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. SaiSatish. We are absolutely thrilled to have you with us tonight. I request you to kindly take this session forward.
Well, thank you, Sharana, and good evening, all of you. I hope you can hear me okay and see me okay. Yeah, can I get a yes? Sharana, I can't hear you. Okay, cool. I see some chat messages. Yes, great. Again, thanks for joining. It looks like on a weekday evening, I'm sure it's been a long day, and it is quite impressive to see the turnout here. I believe, a lot of people are trying to make a transition into product management and want to get into that role. But looking at the numbers here, these are the people who are actually very serious about it. So congratulations, first of all. That's a first step to take. And, hopefully we will have an informative discussion here. The way I'd like to go through the next 30-35 minutes is give you some perspectives, talk about some myths, that popular myths that people have about product management. I spend quite a lot of time coaching various folks who want to get into product management, aspiring product managers, and people who just got into that role and trying to figure out how to become an effective PM in their roles. So I'll try and bring some number one perspectives, number two, top three myths, and try to provide a different way to think about it. And please keep this interactive. I know this is not the best medium to be very interactive, but if you have a question, either you ask that question on the chat here, or raise a hand, and at the end of it, we will certainly I'll get to each of you, and you can unmute yourself and ask the question. In fact, that is a preferred way. So go ahead and ask your questions via audio if you're not inclined to type on it. So with that, let me quickly begin. I won't spend much time, but I want to bring in 15 years I've been in product management. I started my career as an engineer and moved into architect role. And I made a deliberate transition into product management. Now, the reason why I'm emphasizing deliberate is because a lot of product managers that you see are accidental product managers, right? They fall into that role somehow and then try to understand, now what do I do? Now, how do I become effective in that? But in my career journey, I had to make a very deliberate transition because on one hand, I really loved engineering. I believe I was a very good engineer, but at the same time, I had this passion and interest for working with customers, understanding their problems, understanding their pain points, and bringing those insights back into the team, the development team, the engineering team, and work with them to see how best we can solve those problems. Right. And of course, it wasn't easy. I had to, work with my mentors, take their help and guidance. I have to work with my senior leadership team to convince that I am capable of doing this role. And I'm going to give some lessons and insights on how every one of you can do it. And it is a proven way because it's not just about me or my journey. I, continuously help people who are in that journey to make the transition, and it works. So I'll bring some of those insights as well into this. But let's take a step back, and I'm assuming this is a combination audience of aspiring PMs who are coming from engineering roles, business analysts, project managers, program managers, solution consultants, which is very, very typical, right? It is not at all surprising if you're coming from that role and have an interest or a keen interest to understand what this particular role is and how you can get into it if you're interested, right? So let's start with a fundamental understanding of what is product management. Now, if you try to find an answer to that, I can guarantee you can be completely confused, right? There are so many definitions of it, so many ways of articulating it. A lot of people come from their own perspective and examples, but the best way that I can describe this particular role is essentially it's a mix of art and science, right? It's while it is a specific set of skills that one needs to use, acquire and use, but at the same time, it's also an art of identifying market opportunities, right? Identifying the problems in the market, the problems that exist for a group of users or buyers, and identifying, quantifying that opportunity, and then driving the team. Now, this is very important because a lot of people unfortunately misunderstand the titles like product owner, right? Product owner doesn't really own a product, right? It's a metaphor for certain things. So this particular role drives the team to develop very compelling alternative, very compelling solution. Why? Because most of the customers, most of the problems, there are alternatives available. The alternatives could be with respect to other products in the market, other solutions in the market, or workarounds and hacks and jugaad, right? People are trying to solve their problem because it's urgent for them. And hence your product, your offering, your solution has to be a lot more compelling, a lot more competitive. And of course, it needs to be profitable for the business, for the company that you're making. Now, how long will it take to be profitable? It depends on what industry you are in, what products you are in, what customers you are in. But essentially the goal is to drive the teams to build compelling, competitive, and profitable products. Right, so that's a basic understanding, of what product management is. Now, I'm sure you're all already aware that it's a very, very hot and happening role in India today, and even in the world. In fact, the interest in product management has skyrocketed in the last 3 years. Some of us who have been product managers for more than a decade are actually quite surprised with the kind of traction and interest that this particular role is getting today. Not surprising, because many companies are moving to create products to delight markets, not just individual customers, right? When you delight an individual customer, you are essentially working on a project. Most of the people who come from solutions consulting or implementation or delivery, you are often focused on creating value for one client at a time, whereas products is creating value for a group of people, for a market at a time, right? So not surprisingly, it's a very, very hot role, both in terms of the impact that this role can create in the organization, and at the same time, fascinating insights, information about the compensation, right? It's one of the highly compensated roles today in the industry. As you can see, a lot of people who move into product management come from these roles, right? Number one, you see engineering and design, business analysts, consultants, you name it. Many disciplines are a starting point for people who move into product management. So don't be surprised if you're coming from one of these things. It is quite common. Also, if you see, given that lots of companies are building products, both startups, mid-level and large companies, even in India, the emphasis on that particular role is very high. There are 43,000 plus job openings just for product managers available today. Excuse me. You can see that United States alone has about 1.8 million PM roles that are there, whereas in India it's fast growing, but it's still relatively very small in number. You look at the salaries, right? A senior product manager today commands anywhere between 35 to 50 lakhs per annum in India, right? And these are not made up statistics. In fact, I would request folks from IPL to actually share with all of you a very interesting report, right? A product management benchmark survey report of India 2021, where fascinating insights in that report given by aspiring product managers, current PMs, and people who are hiring for PMs, right? All those insights are combined into a fascinating report, so you should take a look at it. And if you are thinking about how do I get into product management role, right? I think it's important to pay attention to what we are going to discuss in the next few minutes. The way I want to walk us through in the next few minutes, I want to cover three things. One, we'll talk about mindset, we'll talk about skill sets, and we'll also talk about a career strategy that all of you can adopt how to get into PM roles, right? So that way, at the end of this call, at the end of long and tiring evening, you have something actionable to take and start applying that from tomorrow onwards, right? So that is if both of us have not achieved that, then we've all collectively wasted our time, right? So I hope that's not the case, but then let's move forward. Now, if you start thinking in terms of a product manager, right? What are the key responsibilities of a PM? There's a lot of them, right? A lot of people talk about requirements development, management, product marketing, product design, and agile and product planning and lots of things. But fundamentally, there are three responsibilities for a PM. Number one is what I call as building the right product along with building the product right? So if you come from an engineering background or implementation or delivery background, most of your focus is on building the product right? However, a more important aspect to consider before you get there is building the right product, because you don't want to build a product, something that people don't want. You may have built it in a fantastic way, but if you don't have enough number of people who actually want to use that product because they have a need to address, because they have a pain point to solve, then that product is a flop. And believe me, many products fail, right? I have worked in probably a dozen very large scale projects and products, just a handful of them succeeded. And that's the nature of product development, right? I happen to be in products that, core Java. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. So I was part of a team in Sun Microsystems, was part of that. And, also was part of a team that actually sent rovers to Mars, which is even more fascinating, and then spent considerable amount of time in enterprise communication and collaboration. Now, in all these things, one thing I've learned is you really need to de-risk a lot of things upfront before you start building the product. So this is a very important part. And what this involves essentially is what we call as customer insighting, right? Now, many of you may not know what this means. It's basically understanding your customer, their journeys, their context, and figuring out something that other people have not figured out, right? And then solving that in a better way than the others. Let me give you a very interesting example, right? So there is this very, very powerful story called the $300 million button, right? It's a very interesting story, a real story this is. I'm sure many of you are shoppers online, you use e-commerce products or applications to buy things online. Now I'm talking about 5-6 years ago where there are several e-commerce products like this, not just Amazon and Flipkart, but many, many of them. And this is a very, very large company in the US which had an e-commerce presence. Normally, if you want to buy some products, right, you go to that website or mobile app or mobile website on your device, and then you search for the product that you're looking for, you find it, you add it to the cart, and you probably add more than one, and then you start the checkout process, right? I'm sure you'll realize or you remember when you actually, let's say you are not signed into that e-commerce portal, right, the shopping portal. Often what happens is when the step where you actually start checking out, usually there is a pop-up that comes up and says, hey, do you want to log in with your account? If you don't have an account with us, register with us. There is a register button there, right? So just like that, this particular e-commerce site had a small pop-up that put login and password on one side. Please log in so that we know your preferences and we know your payment methods, favorite payment methods, so that the checkout process could be really seamless. Or there is a register button on the side that said, if you're not a customer yet, log in, create an account, and then we will save your preferences, right? Now, of course, with any login, interaction, there is a forgot password link as well. Now, it sounds very innocuous, right? It looks very innocuous. We have seen this screen many, many times in many, many e-commerce pages. But the product managers in the company were noticing that more than 70% of the people who added some product into the cart are not going through with the purchase. The purchase is not complete. So there is a lot of discussion about what's going on. They seem to be interest, they seem to be intent, price, it doesn't seem to be a problem. They have actually added to the cart. So what is going on? Now, there are two ways to look at it, right? One, you can sit in your comfort of your office and start looking at data and analyzing that. But a more interesting way is to actually, put yourself in the shoes of the customer or walk with that customer in that journey, possibly in a usability test or something. And this product manager, one person, actually spoke to 15 people who went through that journey and came with some very interesting insights. The insight was, most of the people don't even remember whether they have created an account in this particular e-commerce page or not. So they don't know what email they've used. Apparently, many of us, on an average, each of us have at least 3 email accounts. So I don't even remember which email that I gave to create an account here. So my natural reaction is click on the forget password, right? And the data showed on their side, there were 160,000 forgot password clicks every day, right? Now that's a whoppingly high number. On the other hand, that register button, a lot of people clicked on that. And when you click on it, there is a simple form that comes up, right? Your name, your email, and your password. And a lot of people are just not doing that. So essentially, people are adding items to their cart. And this particular thing seems to be a barrier or a constraint to move forward. So when the designers and the product managers sat down together and used this insight, they made one very simple change on that pop-up. Instead of the register button, they just changed it to continue, right? And they put one simple text saying that you don't have to register with us, just continue with your shopping. But if you would prefer that we save your preferences, you can register later. That's it. With that change, every month the sales increased by $15 million. In annual sales increased by $300 million. And that's why it's called a $300 million button. Now, how did that happen? It did not happen by gut, by instinct or anything. It happened through deep customer insighting. And that's a very important skill set. right? So customer insights is a very, very powerful thing and very important thing for product managers. Finding the right champions. Now, a lot of you in companies may have good ideas, right? You have really cool ideas, either in the product or your customers. Hey, can we build this? Can we do that? And all of that stuff. But that's not enough. You have to find the right set of people who will sponsor it, who will, initiate it, who will fund it, who will support it, and all of that. These could be product heads, this could be sales leaders, this could be your executive leadership, or bring in the customers as well, right? So finding the right champions is another big area where product managers spend time, and they should be spending time, right? It's a very, very high impact area. And of course, finally, when you're building anything, whether it's a new feature in a current product or different products, the new products that you're proposing, a business plan is super important, because you are talking about spending enormous amount of time, resources, people in building something that you hope to get returns on it. So you need to be able to forecast what those projections would be, what those revenues would be. Now, you will not be accurate, but this is a super critical skill. Again, not for every product manager, but somebody who actually can create a significant impact in the organization at a certain grade. And I'll talk about what those potential grades are and everything, right? So key responsibilities, I think these are the three most important ones. If this excites you, right? If this is something that you really want to be in, then product management is absolutely the right path for you. Okay. Now, usually I do, here are my learnings, here are my perspectives, but I thought this time, I spend a lot of time coaching with people who want to get into that role, and I started seeing a certain pattern, right? And common questions that keep coming up. And there's nothing wrong. These are obviously genuine questions. So I thought I'll bring 3 myths about product management that I'm seeing, I'm hearing from a lot of people who are getting into it, and try to demystify that or bust the myth, if you will, and then see if it answers many of your questions. And if you still have questions, happy to discuss that towards the end of it, right? Now, the way I want to go through these myths is in 3 perspectives. One is, let's talk about some mindset. Let's talk about some skill sets that are relevant in that particular myth. And finally, we'll talk about career strategy, as I said. So the first myth is product management is a technical role. Now, it is not surprising, because you see a lot of job descriptions, a lot of people, your friends, your peers, your colleagues, or anyone who probably came from engineering background, right? A lot of people, as we saw in the chart before, move from engineering into product management. And hence there is this assumption that is made that I need to be technical. I need to have an engineering background. Well, that is not really true. It is true in certain cases. For example, it is true if your product uses very interesting, compelling, and advanced technologies, right? Now, the reason why it is important there is because you will be working with the people who are actually using technology to solve the problem, right? To build the product. And hence, it is important for you to have that meaningful conversation with that team. If you completely are novice in technology, then one of the important things for product managers is to gain credibility, gain the respect of the team members, right? So you might miss on that. So you should, if you are working on technology products, it is important that you really understand technology. You don't have to be a programmer, you don't have to come from an engineering background, but it's really important that you try and understand the technology and see how best you can actually apply that, and let the experts build the product. You are not the expert. The engineering team is the expert. Let them build the product, but you are going to work with them and have the conversations around prioritization, business impact, customer delight, all of those things, right? So this is a super important thing. Now, that's a very important mindset. The best way to remember that is through this, metaphor, if you will. I'm sure many of you have seen this picture, either on TV or somewhere. You see these Western orchestras where a bunch of violinists are playing violin, a bunch of cellists are playing cello, a bunch of pianists are playing piano. And there's this one guy with this black suit and a stick in his hand and waving the hands up and down, right? Now, my friends, that is the product manager. Now, the analogy is this person actually knows how to play violin. This person knows how to play the piano or the bass or anything, but is not an expert in any of those. The experts are the people who are playing this. So this person can direct the entire teams, knows when to up level the piano and down level the violin and vice versa, and create a harmonious orchestra, right? So the role of this person as a product manager is a master orchestrator of the productizing process, right? There is a whole process in taking an idea, taking a problem, taking a challenge in the market, and coming back, and how do you build a solution or product? How do you test it? How do you get the feedback? And how do you take this to the market, communicate the value to the market, and get customers, right? So of course, in that context, the product manager works with various functional teams, right? And we'll get to that in a minute. But takeaway, this is a mental model for you to remember, the orchestrator of the productizing process. Now, if you ask me, what are the specific skills, functional skills, from a product management perspective, right? Now, this particular role usually requires three types of skills. One, domain skills, right? If you are in some industry domain, it could be security, it could be e-commerce, it could be healthcare, it could be financial services, insurance, whatever it is. Having a good understanding, experience, and expertise in that domain will come in super handy. But that alone is not enough. The second group of skills, or category of skills, if you will, is a functional skills, right? And we'll talk about what those functional skills are. And the third one is some leadership skills that are very, very critical for each one of you to get into that role. So what are the functional skills, right? Typically, when we talk about a product or a solution that you're going to take it to market, you're going to build, there are three things: desirability, feasibility, and viability. Desirability focuses pretty much on who is the group of people who wants to solve this problem? Who is the one who are going to desiring a solution, either from you or from anybody else in the market? So you need to find the need, find the pain points or challenges, and come back and quantify that market opportunity and say, okay, we have done this analysis. Here are the group of people we should first prioritize and target, and create something, put it in their hands, test it, and come back, validate this, and then do multiple prototypes, or what we call in product language as minimum viable products, right? So that's desirability. Now, feasibility is all about, can we do it, right? If desirability is, should we even solve this problem with our product and solution? Feasibility is all about, can we do it? Do we have the ability? Do we have the resources? Now, do we have the requirements hashed out? Do we have the designs ready? Have we prioritized things? Have we planned things? And have we started executing it, right? Now, that execution is most of you are familiar in different development models like Agile, Kanban, and less and less on waterfall, but it's still there, right? And then finally, it is a very important responsibility of a product manager to actually make sure that whatever you're building is financially sustainable. Even if you're not making money in the market, even if you're not selling it for hard cash or money, you need to make sure that this thing is sustainable, otherwise you will shut down. So what are the ways that you will basically fund this initiative, right? Fund this product. Sometimes it is direct monetization, sometimes it is indirect. Now, of course, for you to take this to market, to get customers, you're going to work with product marketing and sales teams and partnerships to actually make sure that you put this out in the market, and those people are ready to sell that product in the market, right? So there are a whole bunch of functional skills for product management. The intersection of all these things is this very strategic role. That is why this is a strategic role. This is not a tactical role like many other functional roles. Okay, so myth number 2, product managers just write requirements. Now, again, this is not entirely wrong. That's probably because many people who interact with product managers in their context always see them only writing user stories, requirements, working with design to come up with some markups if it is a digital product, right? All of those things. But really, a product management, the way to think about the responsibilities of product management and the roles and the titles that you have. I'm sure you're familiar with lots of titles in the industry today, right? In India, we have very creative titles for product managers as well. Different companies are coming up with very innovative titles. So I won't usually talk about titles. I usually focus on role and responsibilities. And again, there are many ways to do it, but I wanted to bring in a slightly different way of understanding it initially proposed by one of my friend, Jason Shen, who's a product leader. And the way that to look at this is, you have an x-axis and you have a y-axis. The x-axis talks about, on the left side, tree, right? A tree and a forest. A tree essentially is, you are zooming in, you are detail focused, detail oriented, and diligent around it. A forest is something, a big picture view, right? So you look at from afar, there are so many trees around it, you get a full view of what that place is like and what might contain inside that. On the y-axis, on the top, you see it's a logical thinking mind, logical thinking brain, decision making, right? Very, very specific, data driven, data informed, metrics driven, all of that part of it. And the bottom of it is heart. This is where you see a lot of empathy, a lot of understanding of customer emotions and all of that, right? So if you have a grid like this, a quadrant like this, there are 4 different personas, if you will, of a product managers, right? I call them analyst, organizer, explorer, and advocate. Now, analyst is somebody who is very detail oriented and looking for data to make informed decisions. Often they are working very closely with the development team, with the customer support team, identifying the problems, making sure that they are fixed, testing them, focusing on the details part of it, right? And then you have the organizer persona, which is working with lots of team members. Now you need to understand where each of the team member is coming from. There could be design, there could be marketing, there could be development and all of that, and bringing that empathy into it, but still very, very focused on that particular feature or that particular product or release, right? Now you start looking at the other side, which is big picture, but bringing in a lot more emotions and customer understanding and customer empathy. These are the people who actually are very strong listeners, fantastic communicators. These are the people who will motivate the team members, organization leaders, right? These are typical leaders that you see, product leaders in large organizations. And then finally, explorer. Explorer is often outbound focused. They are looking at market trends. How do we take our product and understand what is happening in the market, position our product appropriately so that it resonates, the message and the value resonates within the market. And of course, vice versa, bringing back those trends that you see, technology trends, market trends, consumer behavior trends, and coming back and saying, hey, this is what is going to happen, we believe, in the next 2 years. So how do we plan our roadmap? What is our strategy going to be, right? Those kind of conversations. Now, if you put titles to this particular personas, right, you will often see something like this. A product owner and product manager are focused primarily on the tactical decision making on specific things, very organized, but data informed, data driven decision making, logical thinking. Whereas as you move in your career to next levels, more of strategic thinking needs to come in, right? A lot more of looking ahead 1 year, 2 year, 3 years ahead, big picture, and bringing back. And of course, you have got to be an awesome storyteller, person who motivates the team members and all of that, right? So that's a way to think about. Again, I didn't want the traditional approach of here are the job responsibilities of a product owner or a product manager. That you can get anywhere, right? Most of the places you can find that information. Okay, so now if you ask me, what do I need from a skill set perspective, right? So think of this as a mindset, the approach that you want to do, take, and here are the skill sets. Now there are literally 25 competencies here for effective product managers at all the roles, right? All the way up to chief product officer. But then if you look at the color shading here, the blue ones are what many companies call as inbound product management, right? This is where a lot of PM roles in India are today. Again, if you look at, there is a light blue, section that's called product planning. This is where a lot of product owners spend their time writing, personas, requirements, user experience design, and roadmaps and prioritization and all of that. Whereas the dark blue shades typically are product managers, right? Now the red ones, of course, some companies call it as outbound product management, or some companies call it as product marketing, right? So if you come from a product marketing background, it is a nice indirect way to get into product management if that's what interests you, right? It's a fantastic role, and product marketing managers are well suited to get into it because they can bring in that outside perspective, that market perspective easily, much more easily than people who move from engineering background, right? So this is what I call as a competency wheel, right? So there are 25. Don't worry, you don't have to master all of these things right away, but depending on the stage that you are in, depending on the level you are in, some of these things become really, really important, right? So that's how you get into product management and product leadership roles. Myth number 3, product managers spend all their time with development teams, right? And this also comes out in a lot of in the product management survey that was conducted by Institute of Product Leadership across India. A lot of time, about 60% of the time, is spent with the development team. Now, that is unfortunate because a product management role is to work with cross-functional teams. Now, what are these cross-functional teams? I'm sure in your own teams, you will notice that if you're working on some project or a product, today you have what we call as Scrum teams, right? If you follow Agile methodology or even otherwise. Now, the composition of this team, if you look at it, you have developers, you have quality engineers, you have designers, you have marketeers, you have technical writers. Sometimes you have sales popping in and asking questions about, hey, when are we going to get this out? And your customers, your leadership team. So there are various functions that as a product manager that you will have to continuously interact with, not just the development team. Of course, development team is the one that is building that product or solution, but constantly you need to be negotiating, influencing other teams. And that is why this role is fascinating role, because of, other than the core skill sets that we talked about, one of the most important leadership skills that is required for this role is influencing without authority, right? Because nobody reports to you. And often in many companies, until you become a director of products, all the product managers mostly are individual contributors, right? So, but then you will have to influence everybody in this cross-functional team to bring them to a common perspective, to align them towards a common goal. And at every step of the way, you need to drive that to get that product out, right? So this is the challenging part of the role. This is also most exhilarating part of the role if you like such kind of thing, right? So you're working with all the other team members. Now, bonus myth, I said 3, but here's a 4th one, by far one of the most popular questions that I get asked, right? A certification or an MBA is required to become a product manager. Now, again, this is a myth because a lot of job descriptions are asking for an MBA, or maybe you would have seen some friends who finished some MBA getting into that role. Now, that is unfortunate because the better way, and the way that product management hiring is happening, very regularly these days, more so, is not through some chapa, not through some degree. And by the way, what is really important to understand is a certification or MBA or any other degree is nice to have, right? Maybe you should have it, but don't bet your career because you have that, on that, right? Usual analogy that I give to people is, think of these as insurance, health insurance plans, right? It is important to have it, but don't hope to use it. Because I'll tell you why. I've hired lots and lots of product managers in my career, and I've never hired anybody because they have some certificate from somewhere or because they have some degree somewhere. So if that is the case, then how should you go about doing it, right? How should you go about convincing people that you actually have the necessary things, necessary skills and mindset that you will be able to perform in that role? And this is where I strongly emphasize to all of you, discard your resume. Well, discard is a strong word. De-emphasize your resume. Don't spend too much time decorating it, stuffing with 3-letter acronyms, 4-letter acronyms, and all of that. But focus more on demonstrable assets, meaning that you go through a structured, upskilling. And this is important because today you and I can sit anywhere and go through a bunch of blogs, articles, videos, and writings from many people. And a lot of it is junk, by the way. And a lot of it is, some of it is very good. And you can put together yourself a learning path and acquire those skills and claim to know what you know. But that's not the right way to do it, because how else will you differentiate from the hundreds of people who are also interested in that opportunity, who are also doing the same thing that you are doing. The best way to stand out today is as you acquire these skills in a very structured manner, in a more deliberate way, you build a portfolio. You build a portfolio of assets that you can demonstrate, and then you showcase it in various forums. You can showcase it as a blog article on LinkedIn. You can showcase that as a 2-minute video on YouTube. You can showcase that as a speaker in some event. You can showcase that as a jury, as a panelist, as a moderator. There are a dozen ways how you can demonstrate to your potential hiring managers that you not just have acquired those skills, but have the ability to demonstrate them. So this, by far, in my view, is the most effective way to make transition from any role that you may come from. And I'm saying this with so much confidence because I've seen this with lots of people who go through this IPL program, who do this and get that transition, right? So specifically, curated set of courses that are most relevant for you to get into the program. While there are 25 skills there are 5 that are handpicked based on what hiring managers are looking for. And then you spend time in acquiring and learning those things in a very hands-on way. And as you build those hands-on way, you're actually building a portfolio. And then you use that portfolio to demonstrate to lots of hiring managers and leaders in your company to signal that you no longer are the same person that you used to be, but you're a very different person and you have absolutely everything to be in that role, right? So if there is one thing that you can take away from this particular thing, it is this one, right? Now, finally, a career strategy, right? Again, please don't bet your transitions, not just into product management, into anything based on a resume. It's the easiest thing to put together. And I'll say this, right? I see a lots of resumes, hundreds of resumes. Every resume looks awesome. Everybody's resume is good. So how are you going to tell the hiring manager, who, by the way, or even the recruiters, who, by the way, have not more than 10 to 20 seconds to screen and filter your resume? So they're looking for keywords. So it's a bad idea to just start or lead with a resume, lead with your portfolio, lead with the videos that you have, lead with the slide decks that you created in solving some problem, right? It doesn't have to be a real problem. You can take a particular problem, very interesting stuff, whatever is there relevant today in the market, and apply those skills. It could be market analysis, it could be pricing, it could be go-to-market strategy, it could be user experience design, it could be product prioritization, whatever it is, and build those things and showcase them. All right. Now, if you have your own idea, if you have been thinking about working on it, as you learn these skills, put those into action, apply those things in that context. That's the only way to get to and acquire, product management skills. And of course, often I say that sometimes who you know is more important than what you know. Right? So it's really important to build your connections, build a network, nurture them, help them, volunteer, and do those things. And when the opportunity comes, you can easily leverage that network for those career transitions, right? People often underestimate the power of networking, and it's also not an easy thing, right? So you need to first of all get access to that kind of a network. You should be able to reach out, make those connections, ask for help or provide help, and all of those things. So find a context where you can do all these things. These are all absolutely possible. You can do it on your own, sitting in your home, but you know what? You require enormous diligence, discipline to go through that. And that is the only reason why many people get into some kind of a structured program, right? And once you get into that, if you follow these things, transitions are absolutely possible and easy. So with that, finally, as I said, I see this people doing every day on a daily basis, often weekly, more than 4 times a day. I get an email saying that, thank you for your guidance and help. I'm able to make it. I made the transition. I moved into this role. Fantastic. Great. Now, remember, it just doesn't have to be the title of a product manager, but if you are getting to that role, which has that impact, which creates that impact for the organization, you are already there, I'm sure the compensation will be very, very high. On an average, I've seen, people getting, if you're moving, 7 to 10 years of experience, if you're moving in, you get easily 30 to 35% jump if you're getting into product management, right? So, The fact that you are all here on a weekday evening shows that you are serious about it. So start your journey now and follow the path that we just discussed. And I'm sure you will be able to make it into that role. So with that, I'll leave it up open for Q&A. I'll also keep monitoring the chat or Q&A box here. But if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. Sharana will unmute you, and you can ask the question.
Yes, thank you, sir. There are some questions already in the Q&A window.
Yeah, I'm looking at Shantanu's asking, is this, by the way, folks, don't forget, apparently there's a very nice gift for you if you ask the best question. So go ahead and ask, don't hesitate. Is the job related to market research and giving a lot of presentation? So both yes, the answer is both yes. Market research, both primary and secondary research. Often people just try and do Uncle Google, search for reports and search for blogs and bring that. That is not useful. For that, you don't need any product management skills, right? Anybody can do that. But what is really important is customer discovery, problem discovery, which is mostly primary research. And there are certain specific techniques that you will need to know how to do that, right? So market research, yes. Give a lot of presentation. Yes, because again, it doesn't have to be a PowerPoint presentation. It is because your role is to influence other people, right? If you had people reporting to you, you probably will say, hey, you know what? I think you should do this. Otherwise, I'll take care of you in your performance appraisal a year later, right? That's not the role. The role is to influence your key stakeholders. And hence, you have to develop a lot of storytelling abilities, presentation abilities, and that skill is going to be very important. Okay, good. Hopefully that answers Shantanu. So the question I have, 11 years from Arti, experience in consultant in IT industry. You pursued data science course, looking to transition into product management. Good. So I'm sure many of you are realizing that products today are being built in such a way that you are instrumenting them to collect data, right? Whether it is user information, whether it is usage information, what part of the product is often used by people, how much is it used, how much time is spent in completing a workflow, lots of very interesting things. So once you collect that data, what are you going to do with that? Remember, a product management manager, fundamental responsibility is to make contextual decisions. It's a customer facing business decision making role. And if you're able to bring your understanding of data and data science techniques, right, and use that to make those informed decisions, that role is highly valuable today. In fact, there is a new title that is emerging in the industry called data product managers or AI product managers, right? So absolutely, it's a great path, Aarti.
We have another question from Sogata from YouTube. Sure. Can you please throw some examples how one can transition to a product role from a program management or TPM roles?
Examples, I'm not sure. Can the person come on audio and ask that question? I'm not sure what do you mean by examples, because lots of people who I know and I have personally coached come from project management background, program management background. In fact, there is one person who actually was 16 years as a project manager in Infosys. And this person today is a head of products, right? He skipped all these layers of senior PM, group PM, director PM, and became, of course, you have to understand that you won't be able to jump from similar type of company into another, same type of company. And this person actually looked at and said, what is the most exciting, challenging role and type of company that I want in? And he picked up a startup that raised a Series C funding and actually got into that role. So there are numerous examples around that. Okay. So several questions coming up. Please ask in the Q&A, not in the chat, because there's a lot of other chatter on the chat box as well. How to gain hands-on skills to demonstrate for hiring managers for freshers and how to land jobs, PM. So this is a great question, not just for freshers. I think Neetu asked this question. This is also very relevant for folks who haven't had the opportunity to or have the opportunity to work in the context of products, right? Irrespective of what role you are in, whether you're in development, testing, or design, or whatever it is. There are many ways, right? You have to find opportunities to solve this yourself. Number one, you can volunteer. You can volunteer for lots of companies would love for you to come and say, hey, can I help you on this particular thing, right? Right from startups to mid-sized companies will offer you that volunteer experience. The second way to do that is if you are going through any structured upskilling program, like the international certification in product management from IPL, every skill you have an opportunity to work hands-on on your own product idea or a catalog of product ideas, real world product ideas that are there that you can build. You don't have to build a product, but you apply those skills and build a portfolio, right? And demonstrate that. So building a portfolio today, there are a half a dozen ways to do it. The question is, are you ready to take that step? Are you ready to put that extra effort that is needed, as opposed to passively consuming knowledge, getting some certificate and say, here, I have a certificate. Can I have that job, please? Right? And that's not a very effective way of going through this.
Sam, we're just going to unmute a few people who want to ask the question.
Sure, absolutely. Let's have a try.
Ankita Bara.
Yeah.
Ankita, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Ankita.
Hi. Yeah, it's a great session. Thank you so much for briefing us on the product management aspects. So personally, actually, I work on SAP and I have about 12 plus years of experience currently as a project manager. So being in IT project management, is it that I have to aim for, if I want to work on a product management scenario, so is it that I can apply to or target only SAP related products, or is it that I can work in Google or any other non-IT industry also? So if tomorrow I want to just maybe update my resume, how can I start? Where do I start from?
Very good question. And I think I'm going to slightly generalize this even for others as who have this question, right? So first of all, it's important to understand a product management also has project management responsibilities up to a certain stage, right? Up to senior PMs, because you want to make sure that you drive the teams to deliver that product. So your project management experience is going to come in very handy in this particular role as well. So don't discard that. Try and leverage that into the next role. So now the question is, should I look at only SAP related or whatever you have been working on, right? Now let's be practical and realistic here. While theoretically it is absolutely possible for you to move from one particular industry, one particular domain, one type of products into another one. And I've seen this happen, right? Somebody who came from an insurance background today is in e-commerce industry, right? It is absolutely possible because there are too many variables and too many big jumps there. So my suggestion to all of you is try and find in your own current context, current organization, if there is a way to transition into the product role. And many organizations have that opportunity, right? Of course, it also comes with an advantage of you building reputation, credibility, and people know you, you know people, and you use that to that advantage. And then get into that role first, and then the doors open up wider across all companies for you, right? Now, in any company, for example, let's say you're in SAP, and you want to jump into, let's say, some crypto, right? Hypothetically, something completely different. Now, remember, we talked about three things, right? Domain skills, functional skills, and leadership skills. Now, in some cases, your domain skills might be very low because you have not spent enough time in that area. By the way, domain skills cannot be taught. You have to spend time, experience that to become good at it. But the other two can be very high. If you're very high on product management and very high on specific leadership skills like the art of storytelling, the influencing without authority, negotiation and conflict management, absolutely that transition can happen. Now, one of the things that I always keep telling people who are looking into transitions is the best way to do that is an indirect transition, right? You can come from accounts management, you can come from product marketing, you can come from QA, you can come from project management. but find a path to get into that in your current context as far as possible before making a leap out of it. Right? That's a much more practical way.
Okay. Just one another question. So what are the characteristics like from project management I can take into product management, or what is it that in my resume, or, what can I go and tell people that, these are the characteristics which I know that will also be used in product management, and, please maybe try me out or give me a role or an opportunity.
Great question. So if you look at it, a project manager's responsibility is fundamentally delivering something on time, in quality, on budget. That's it, right? You coordinate with various groups of people to make sure all these three are met. Very similar to what program managers do at a multiple projects level or a program level. Now that is a super critical skill even for product managers, right? Because there is time to market considerations. You don't want to be late because either the customer behavior changes or they've chose something else. So ensuring, along with the customer context that you bring in, these these three areas where making sure that it is on quality, on budget, and on time. Of course, there are scrum masters and everybody who's facilitating it, but you are going to be driving as a product owner in that scenario. So those are the areas that you can completely carry forward and leverage and use it. And you will be using it. In fact, there is no escaping that, at least until you get into director of PM, where you are not tactically managing the projects, right? At that time, you're managing portfolios and initiatives and investments.
Yeah, just one last question. Sorry.
I think, sorry, we've got to give others an opportunity.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
There are lots more. I mean, there's a barrage of questions. I don't know if we can take all of them, but a few that you would like to choose from.
So is there somebody who wants to go on audio and ask a question?
Okay, I'll just unmute.
Yeah. If there is anyone, I think we'll prioritize.
Ashish, I see a few hands. Just give me a moment. Ashish, please go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, hi, Satish. Very good evening to you, and very thank for the awesome presentation that you gave. So, Satish, my issue, which I'm very much narrating here, is like I have a 15 years of experience into technical lead role of testing, and I'm doing a test management as well. And then within my organization, there are a lot of transitioning is happening into product management. There is a separate product management competency that they have created.
Sure.
Because it's an internal product company. It's an oil and gas based organization.
Okay.
So they have a lot of products that they are creating as a portfolio where they are transitioning the project managers into product managers. And then when I applied for one of the roles of a product manager, it was not been a very good experience. So there, the outcome was that I might have to have a demonstrative skills which you are talking about.
Correct.
So that is one thing, and then they have their learning path as well of a product management. So I'm working on that learning path.
Very good.
Skilling myself in the within the organization, and I have a very good reputation as well in my domain with the program managers and everything. But one of the another point that came out from a senior person is that you take up a 1 year experience of a project manager as well. That will help you. So should I because I have also inquired about the current program which you are running from the Institute of Product Management, and so shall I take up that as a program to learn product management because it has hands-on experience also, or should I take up something into project management? Because last year I completed my PMP, and before that I did my test management certification also.
Yeah. Okay, I understand your dilemma. I think first of all, it's good news that in your organization they are providing a growth path for people who want to move into product management from projects and various things. So I would say that itself is a great opportunity, right? So if you are really keen on getting into this particular role with these responsibilities and impact, the best way to do that is within the current organization. Now, the second part is, as I mentioned before, the project management skills. I'm sure they know you and you know them, and there are obviously certain gaps that they may have identified and help you to understand, upskill those things, fill those gaps, and show it to us, convince us that you can actually do it and do it. So in my view, that seemed like a better option rather than spending one more year in doing what you're doing in project management today, unless of course you really enjoy doing that, right? But if you want to get into PM role, 15 years, I'll also already tell you right away, let's be practical. Don't expect such radical changes to happen if you move out of the organization, right? Because for a very realistic reason that you may not be even affordable to a lot of people who are hiring at a PM role for somebody who doesn't have that PM role. So that could become a constraint or a barrier for you, right? Now, going back to how do you do that? Irrespective of what context you look at, irrespective of what program, what upskilling program that you look at it, whether it is IPL or something, it is important to consider the key elements that I highlighted, right? Number one, spend time on the most relevant skills. Don't learn everything, because today we can learn anything and everything, right? That's available. Second thing is learn from the people who can actually get you practical wisdom because they practice this in their own daily lives, right? That compresses the learning curve. Third one, learn it in a hands-on way that you can build a portfolio, showcase it to your organization. And by the way, you don't have to wait for it, right? The moment you start see the change in the mindset and thinking and the vocabulary, you should continuously apply that in your current company, right? Ask very interesting questions. Use product management vocabulary. They will start seeing you and say, what's going on with this person? Something is really changing, right? That is the first and most important step to happen. One fine day, nobody will wake up and say, oh, wow, you have all the product management skills. Now let's make you PM, right? That's not going to happen. It needs to be gradual, but it needs to be swift. So in my view, put yourself in that context, which will make you build the assets and portfolio. Go back every day to your organization in your own work context, start using this vocabulary, start asking the right set of questions, and you will already be making the change.
Sure, Sai. Thanks a lot for your guidance.
One more. We'll take a question from Dhanesh Vishnu.
Okay, last one. Yeah, I know there are a lot of questions here. Sorry, guys, but I'm sure the team at IPL will be able to answer them. If not, we can even connect through. I can be connected to you in another 15-20 minutes conversation later. Yeah, that's also fine. Last question, Sharon.
Dhanesh.
Yeah, I'm on the line. I hope I'm audible, right?
Yes, you are.
All right. Yeah, good evening. So my question is like, what kind of interaction does the product manager have with the client in? And does the product manager groom the backlog? Can you walk me through a typical product life cycle?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
I lived this through 15 years ago, so I know, and my teams have been, I built teams which did this regularly, right? So this is a very, very important part of the job, right? Now, the first question that you asked, what kind of interaction does you have with your customers, right?
Yes.
Now, if you are not finding opportunities to interact with your customers directly, not indirectly, directly, then you are missing out on a lot of insights and the problems, right? Now, think about typically in any company, if a customer faces an issue, right, using your product or whatever workflows that they are doing, often the first touch point for them is your customer support team. Right? Okay. Now, this customer support is actually going to ask them, okay, what happened? Walk me through, and then collect some information, log and whatnot, and all of that. And that a different types of insight than what you want as a product manager. As a product manager, you don't want to know what happened. You want to know what were they trying to do in that context, what happened, right? Because if you are able to understand what are they trying to accomplish in that context, they may be very interesting ways to solve it. And you might come back with insights saying that, wow, we didn't even realize that these people are trying to use this product this way. Very fascinating insight, right? Now, what are the forums? Often large companies create these forums called product advisory council, customer advisory boards, and voice of customer. I'm sure you've heard of all these things, right?
Yeah.
Or even if you don't have it, even in the virtual world that we are living in, right? If you don't have the opportunity to go and sit down with your customer, the best way is make friends with your customer support team and tell them, next time you get a call from this customer or a support issue log, bring me into the conference room call, and I will ask very different set of questions. Right?
Okay.
That is one way. The second way is tag along with your account team, tag along with your sales team if you're in enterprise products. Fantastic opportunity, right? You go and this is what I used to do. I used to go with my sales team, and when I met the customer, I used to tell them, Mr. Customer, I am not a salesperson. I am not here to sell you anything, but I am here to sit and listen to you, understand your challenges and pain points. I am not going to talk about my product. I'm just going to listen. That's it. It'll open huge doors for you, right? So that's the first part of your question. The second part is usually a product manager spends time on prioritizing the backlog, right? And there are so many ways to prioritize that backlog. It really depends on your company, what methodology you're using. If you apply Moscow method or Kano model or Rice method or custom prioritization, right? So there is a joke among product managers, right? Product managers have to prioritize so much, they even have to prioritize their own kids. Right? Which is wrong, but that's the joke, right? So yes, absolutely, PMs are involved in prioritizing. Now, product owners, on the other hand, will usually take that prioritized backlog and then define those even furthermore to provide clarity to this definition of done and all of those things for the development teams.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. Super. All right. Thank you, folks, and I hope this was useful. And all the best in your quest for moving into this highly impactful role. Take care.
Thank you very much.
By the way, let me pick the best question, I suppose, right?
Yes, we need you to yes, pick the best question.
Okay, so let me just quickly scan through and give me a minute. Okay, good. Shirley gets the best question. Sorry, I could not bring that up, Shirley. You did mention PMs are not experts but orchestrators. Does having depth in one area provide an edge? How does depth fare in a generalist role such as product management? You should have depth in any area, right? Whether it is you are the best person to understand customer, meaning you're an expert in customer empathy, or you are an expert in particular domain or an industry, or you are an expert in business, in finance, in marketing, any of those things, you should have some depth in something, right? And with that brings credibility, with that brings respect with the team, because an engineer might look at you and say, okay, this person, understand that this person may not have the depth in engineering, but he's very strong in that, and he brings that customer context and business context and market context into that, right? So great question, Shirley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sai, and surely our team will get in touch with you.
All right, take care. All the best.
And product management is not a subject that you can get answers to within an hour. Hence, we made various platforms available to address all your queries. You can book a 30-minute session with our senior counselor or reach out to us on our website for detailed information on the international certification in product management. You can also email us at engage@ipl.edu.in. Thank you very much, dear audience, for taking the time off and joining us, and Mr. Sai for throwing some fantastic light on the subject. And we had a lot of questions. Unfortunately, we couldn't take all of them in this 1 hour. So please go ahead and scan the QR code and you can have a session of 30 minutes with our senior counselor. Thank you very much. On that note,
bye.
Have a great night. Please go ahead and scan the QR code to book an appointment with our counselor.